North Sentinel Island has been mapped from orbit, but if you think that means anyone has explored it, you're wrong. The interior has never been surveyed, and everything known about it comes from boats, helicopters, and satellites. The barrier is Indian law, and underneath the law sits a harder one. The islanders have no immunity to ordinary outside diseases, so a visitor with a cold could kill them. After the 2004 tsunami, a Coast Guard helicopter went out to check whether anyone had survived. It was met with arrows. Gangkhar Puensum. Gangkhar Puensum rises 7,570 meters out of the Bhutanese Himalaya, and nobody has ever stood on top of it. It is not unclimbed because it is the hardest. It is unclimbed because it is not allowed. Bhutan banned mountaineering outright in 2003, since the peaks are held to be the homes of deities. Qin Shi Huang's tomb. The tomb is a grassy hill outside Xi'an that has never been opened. The terracotta army was only the outer guard. When those figures came out of the ground in the 1970s, the painted lacquer curled and flaked away within minutes of touching air. Soil surveys over the mound show abnormal mercury readings, matching an account of rivers of mercury that comes from a historian writing more than a century later. Tanaru. Nobody knows what language the man in Tanaru spoke. He lived alone in a patch of Brazilian rainforest for about 26 years, believed to be the last of his people, and refused every attempt at contact. Just like at North Sentinel, the law kept everyone else out. He was known almost entirely by the deep rectangular holes he dug inside his huts, and nobody knows what those were for. He was found dead in his hammock in 2022. The Seed Vault. The Seed Vault at Svalbard is a concrete wedge driven into an Arctic mountainside, built to stay shut. The inner chambers are opened a few times a year, and nobody works inside them. The only withdrawals ever made were by one institute, rebuilding a gene bank destroyed by the war in Aleppo. Then in 2016, meltwater flooded the entrance tunnel of the vault built to outlast civilization. The Big Void. This void sits inside the Great Pyramid at Giza, at least 30 meters long, with no known way into it. It was found in 2017 without opening anything, by counting cosmic ray muons, which are particles from space that fall straight through stone, and noticing where more of them came through than should have. The most studied building in the world was hiding a hollow the length of an airliner. WIPP. WIPP, a nuclear waste repository in New Mexico, is a set of rooms carved into a salt bed that are designed to stop being rooms. The salt creeps inward under its own weight and slowly entombs the drums. A panel designed markers still readable 10,000 years from now, including a message beginning, "This place is not a place of honor." In 2014, one drum, packed with the wrong absorbent, burst underground and contaminated part of the facility. Onkalo. Onkalo corkscrews down into Finnish bedrock, and just like WIPP, it is built to be sealed and never reopened. The design lifetime is 100,000 years, roughly 10 times longer than agriculture has existed. Before the copper canisters are due to fail, an ice sheet is expected to grind across Finland at least once more. Wittenoom. The Australian government dealt with Wittenoom by deleting it. The town mined blue asbestos, and roughly 3 million tons of tailings were left in the valley. Blue asbestos has no safe exposure level and a latency of 20 to 50 years, so the dust blowing down the streets is a lethal dose that takes decades to present. The town was struck from official maps and legally no longer exists. Chernobyl. One room under Reactor 4 holds tens of tons of the melted core, and neither a person nor a robot has ever been inside it. Nearby sits the elephant's foot, the black lava tongue of fuel in the basement, putting out a dose that would kill in about 3 minutes when it was found. By 2021, neutron counts from that sealed room had roughly doubled in 4 years, meaning fission picking back up in fuel nobody can reach. Ukrainian scientists have since reported the climb leveling off. Up to here, the barriers have been rules. This one is the room. Fukushima. Inside the containment vessels at Fukushima, the radiation destroys the machines. Robots were the plan, just like at Chernobyl. The robots don't come back. Camera sensors snow out, electronics fail mid-run, and at least one crawler was abandoned in there. After a decade of attempts, the first sample of melted fuel ever retrieved weighed well under a gram. Naica. The cave of the crystals at Naica sits under a Mexican mine and holds the largest natural crystals ever found, selenite beams, around 11 meters long, weighing tens of tons. The chamber runs at 58 degrees, at close to 100% humidity. At that temperature, a body cannot shed heat, and water condenses inside the lungs. Unprotected, a person lasts about 10 minutes. It was only reachable because the mine's pumps held the groundwater back. In 2015, the pumps were switched off and the chamber re-flooded. The Cuvette Centrale. The Cuvette is a peat swamp in the middle of the Congo Basin, and it was only confirmed to exist in 2017. There is no dry ground in it. None. Reaching the interior means days of wading chest deep with nowhere to sleep, which is how the largest tropical peatland on Earth stayed off the map. Movile Cave. Movile has been sealed off from the surface for about 5.5 million years. The air in it is roughly half the oxygen of normal air, loaded with carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. Similar to Naica, the way in is a shaft and then a dive through flooded passage. Nothing in it has ever used sunlight. The food web runs on bacteria eating chemicals, and dozens of the species above them exist nowhere else. Veryovkina in Abkhazia drops 2,209 meters, and getting to the bottom and back out is a self-supported expedition of about a week. It floods from the bottom upward, with no warning at the surface. In 2018, a team at the bottom abandoned their gear and climbed for their lives, watching the water come up the shafts behind them. Krubera. Krubera is the cave next door, and the two keep swapping the deepest cave record. Veryovkina took it in 2018, and a survey in 2023 pushed it to 2,223 meters. Then a more precise measurement in 2024 took 14 meters back off it, and Krubera reclaimed the record at 2,224. A depth record is the lowest point a human body has reached and surveyed, not the bottom of the cave. Exploration stops at sumps, passages flooded to the ceiling. There is far more cave below the deepest point any person has ever stood, and all of it is full of water. Bushmansgat. Bushmansgat looks like an ordinary pond in South African scrubland. Underneath it is a bell-shaped flooded void more than 270 meters deep. The descent takes minutes. The return takes many hours of decompression, so any problem at the bottom is unsurvivable by definition. In 2005, a diver died near the bottom while recovering a body that had been lying there for a decade. Camp Century. Camp Century is a city the United States built inside the Greenland ice sheet in 1959. 21 trenches and about 3 kilometers of tunnel run off a portable nuclear reactor. Publicly, it was an Arctic research station. It was actually a plan to hide 600 ballistic missiles in tunnels cut into the ice without telling Denmark, which owned the ice. The ice crushed the tunnels faster than the engineers predicted, and the base was abandoned on the assumption the sheet would bury it forever, along with its diesel, coolant, and PCBs. Lake Vostok. Vostok lies under about 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice, and nobody has ever seen it. It sits below freezing and is liquid anyway, held that way by the weight of ice pressing down at around 350 atmospheres. When the Russian drill broke through in 2012, the pressurized water surged up the borehole and froze in place, and that plug is essentially the only sample anyone has. The Denman Trough. If the ice were taken away, the trough in East Antarctica would be the lowest point on land on Earth, about 3.5 kilometers below sea level. That is roughly 8 times deeper than the shore of the Dead Sea. It is packed solid with ice. It is unreachable because there is no space there for a person to occupy. The Filchner-Ronne. Under the Filchner-Ronne ice shelf, there is a sea the size of a country, and looking at any of it means melting a hole through almost 900 meters of ice and lowering a camera on a wire. A camera lowered in 2016 hit a boulder on the sea floor, and there were animals living on it, in permanent darkness, hundreds of kilometers from sunlight. Nobody can explain what they eat. The Gamburtsevs. The Gamburtsev range runs through East Antarctica at about the size of the Alps, and no human has ever seen it. It was found in 1958 by a Soviet team bouncing shockwaves off a landscape they could not look at. Surveys since have reconstructed sharp peaks and V-shaped river valleys, carved by running water, which should have been ground away long ago. Every place before this one has at least been photographed. This one has only ever been heard. The unmapped seafloor. Most of the seafloor has never been measured directly. No satellite sees through water, so the bottom has to be surveyed ship by ship, ping by ping. What most world maps show is a guess inferred from bulges in the sea surface. So the charts have holes big enough to hide a mountain. In 2005, an American nuclear submarine hit an undersea mountain missing from its charts. The bow was crushed and one sailor died. Point Nemo. Point Nemo sits further from land than anywhere else in the Pacific. About 2,700 kilometers of open water in every direction. When anybody is out there, The nearest humans are usually the crew of the space station passing overhead. It is also where dead satellites and stations are deliberately steered down. Brine pools. Brine pools are lakes at the bottom of the sea, 3 to 8 times saltier than the water above them. That brine is dense enough that it does not mix, so it settles into seabed depressions with a real shoreline and a rippled surface underwater. One in the Gulf of Mexico, a kilometer down, sits at 19 degrees, ringed with the carcasses of large crabs. Nothing that swims in comes back out, and the bodies do not decay. The Hadal Trenches. Everyone can name the deepest place in the ocean, and that is the one we have actually been to. Unlike that one spot, most of the Hadal zone has never had a human in it. There is also a flaw to life down there. Deep-sea fish stabilize their proteins with a compound called TMAO and need more of it the deeper they live. Somewhere around 8,200 meters, they run out of margin entirely. Every observed fish depth record sits right at that line. Nyiragongo. Nyiragongo holds one of the few persistent lava lakes on Earth, about 1,000 degrees of molten rock under a thin crust that keeps breaking apart. Its lava is unusually low in silica, which makes it runny rather than sticky. In 1977, the lake drained out through fissures in the flank in under an hour, and the flows came down faster than a person can run. IDDP-1. IDDP-1 was drilled as an ordinary geothermal well in Iceland, and about 2 kilometers down the bit went into a body of molten rock. Nobody was drilling for magma. The well then produced superheated acidic fluid that corroded the wellhead until the whole thing had to be shut in. The magma ate the equipment that found it. Kola. The Kola borehole is the deepest hole anyone has ever drilled, a little over 12 kilometers, in the far northwest of Russia. It stopped because the rock stopped behaving like rock. The temperature came in around 180 degrees, roughly double what was expected, and the rock began flowing plastically, closing back into the hole and gripping the drill. Just like IDDP-1, it was beaten by heat. The deepest hole humanity has ever made is now a rusted steel cap the size of a manhole, welded shut, in the floor of a ruined building. The inner core. The inner core sits underneath all the other places on this list. It begins about 5,150 kilometers down, at roughly 5,200 degrees, about as hot as the surface of the sun, under some 3.6 million atmospheres. It is solid only because the pressure is that great. Kola reached 12 kilometers. The center of the planet is 6,371. Everything known about it was deduced from shadows. Earthquakes send waves through the planet, and they arrive bent and missing on the far side. From the pattern of what failed to arrive, a solid ball nobody will ever touch was inferred. Every place on this list, the trenches, the tombs, the buried mountains, the cave passages that carry on after the divers stop, is in a skin. The deepest hole ever drilled is one scratch across the top of it. Most of this planet is a place no human has ever been, and no human ever will be.